Personal finance presentation. Tax preparation options. Prepare to get financially fit by practicing personal finance. Tax preparation options. When putting together the federal income taxes, we have a few different options to do so. One is to print the information or save the information from the IRS website at irs.gov, irs.gov. You have the latest forms and instructions here. Even if you're getting help to put your tax returns together, it may be useful to get this information in conjunction with any other help you have, noting that even if you have someone else help you to prepare the taxes, you are ultimately responsible for the tax preparation. You're hiring someone else as an agent, so you want to make sure that you have an idea of what is going on. One way to get a better idea, one place to start your research, is to get the actual instructions and the forms. The instructions in particular can be quite useful and a good starting point for your research, as they'll give you kind of instructions on a line-by-line basis of the Form 1040. The next option is to use tax software. Possibly you could find free tax software if your income is below a certain threshold. One place to start to look for that is on the IRS website. Once again, irs.gov, irs.gov. You could type into their website free file options, and you should be able to find their free file options, which usually they're working with third-party filers, meaning generally you're not filing through the IRS when you're looking at these third parties, but they're kind of working with third-party filers, especially as tax returns have become a bit more complex, to see if they can get the tax preparation from these third-party market softwares for income levels below a certain threshold. And then you can actually go through a questionnaire at this point in time, and they can recommend which softwares might be free options for you. Obviously, some of the more bigger named brand softwares are on there, such as a TurboTax and so on, other kinds of softwares that the IRS is working with to try to give links to this free file options for people that are below a certain threshold. Then, of course, you can hire a professional tax preparer, which would be your next option. So note, when you're thinking about your options, then most of the time with people's incomes below a certain threshold, that would usually indicate that their tax returns are usually easier if their income is below a certain threshold. But I would still recommend not so much doing the tax return by hand these days, simply printing it out or using just the fillable forms on the IRS website, because you're much more likely to make mathematical errors and just data input types of errors, as just simply filling out the tax return is quite complex, or at least a tedious type of job, easy to make errors on. Even tax professionals, of course, will be using tax software. So I would recommend then picking up the tax software if you have a fairly basic return, especially these days, given the fact that the tax software, if you have a basic return, might be free, which you could find on the IRS website. Now note that the tax softwares that you look at, there's kind of two categories of tax software. If you're doing your taxes yourself, you're usually looking at tax software which is designed in an interview type process, something like a TurboTax type of software. That's a little bit different than if you were doing tax preparation software, where you have software that's a little designed more for faster data input. That would be something like a Lacert type of software. So if you're an individual doing your own taxes, just note your software will probably be different and look and feel than the software that some of your CPA firms might be using. But it's perfect for an individual tax return, because it goes through an interview type process, basically asking you general questions that will help with the data input and hopefully guide you to put the data input that you would need to be putting in there. Now, if your income becomes more complex, and usually this threshold is fairly high for the free software generally. If your income goes over that threshold, it's probably the case that you're getting a more complex return. You may still I would definitely at least get the software at that point to help you, guide you along with it, rather than doing it by hand. And at that point, you might want to get a tax professional to help give you more advice, because when things get more complex, that's when it'll be worth it to have someone to talk to, both to fill out the tax return, and also because as your taxes become more complex, you want to be projecting out into the future more. So what I would look for when you're looking for a tax professional then is to find someone not simply to meet the immediate need of getting the tax return done, but somebody that's going to help you with longer term planning and hopefully be there for you at a longer term threshold. And so that they can help you with tax planning. They can help you, give you advice and stuff as your taxes become more complex. So that would be the general rule. If your income's below a certain threshold, it should be easier, although there's a lot of different factors with credits these days and refundable credits that actually make low income taxes still somewhat difficult. But you could basically get by with the software there. When your income gets above a certain threshold of complexity, either you can measure that possibly by your income being above a certain threshold in AGI, so that possibly you don't qualify for the free software. That could be an indication that you should be getting more advice in any case. You might be itemizing instead of taking the standard deduction, which adds a substantial level of complexity, which may lead you to say, hey, maybe it's time for me to get some actual tax advice. Or you might be going into from a W-2 job to like a Schedule C, or picking up rental property. So if you do your own business in some way, or you have rental property, those are two things that often add a substantial amount of complexity and also have a factor of planning that would be involved. You want to maybe hire a tax professional at that time. And remember, when you hire a tax professional, because your taxes are becoming more complex, you're not really looking to meet the immediate need. You're looking to build a long-term relationship so they can help you prepare the taxes, plan for the next year, help you with your withholdings. And if you get any letters from the IRS with corrections or anything like that, they can be there for you at that time, hopefully as well. So your options then when you're thinking, okay, if I'm going to hire somebody, is you can hire a certified public accountant, an enrolled agent, or an attorney. These are the general kind of categories that you would have. Now, you could find some of these categories on the IRS website. So if you look on the IRS website, on irs.gov, you can look for the Directory of Federal Tax Return Preparers, and that could give you an idea based on these credentials as to the tax preparers that are there. Now, also note, when you're looking at these tax people that prepare taxes, you might go to a bigger firm or smaller firm. The size of the firm can impact basically how expensive possibly your tax returns will be, and it can impact in terms of what their particular specialization is. In other words, does that tax return specialize in a particular industry? If you're in rental property, do they have a good idea of that, or so on? Do they specialize in business taxes versus individual taxes, and that kind of thing? And also, when you look at the credentials, the certified public accountant firm, if you're looking at a CPA, they have more training. Their licensure is in more training on accounting side of things. And then they have the tax information as well. So if you have business stuff and you have accounting needs and you're worried about basically the bookkeeping process and making sure double checking that the books are kept up and changing something from a tax basis to an accrual basis, it might be that a certified public accountant would be more likely to be able to deal with those kind of accounting and bookkeeping problems, which you might have more often if you have like a Schedule C type of business, sole proprietorships, S corporations, partnerships and business kind of activity going on. The enrolled agent has the credential requirements as well. I don't believe that you have as much requirement for just like bookkeeping type of stuff, accounting type things. So if you have general tax returns that are individual income tax returns without so much emphasis, basically maybe you don't need so much on like a bookkeeping side of thing, then the enrolled agent might be a good place to go. And it might be cheaper for the enrolled agent than the CPA due to the difference in the credentials. Both the CPA, the enrolled agent, and the attorney can also help you generally if you get letters from the IRS. So notice you got the tax preparation process, and then if you're ever audited or you get letters from the IRS and you want someone to basically communicate with the IRS possibly on your behalf, then they generally have the ability you have the ability to hire them as a power of attorney, give them a power of attorney generally, so they can talk to the IRS on your behalf, which can be a very good thing and save time if you get into a situation where the IRS is questioning something and you want to question about it. And then of course you have the attorneys. Now attorneys is kind of the most broad category. So the attorneys aren't generally originally focused in on tax law, and then oftentimes an attorney might then focus in on some area of tax law. Normally when that happens, the attorneys are going to be focused in on a specialized area that might be more complex. So that means the attorney is usually going to be more expensive. But if you have a specialized area that's a bit more complex and you want that specialized need, then I would think that would be the time when you might want a tax attorney type of situation. So that's the general breakout between these three, and then you can basically get your directory, do your own research on it. Just be careful. Like I say, your main goal is to find someone generally that's going to be a long-term relationship possibly, and you're looking for someone that's kind of established that you can work with going forward instead of meeting that immediate need. And the fact that they have the credentials, usually that's going to be a good step forward to be more trusting of them, and then see how established they are with their current practice and so on.